Well, good morning, everyone. This is Daniel Brookshire over at the Institute for Emerging Issues. I'm joined here today by a few of my colleagues. We'll introduce ourselves first, and then I'll go over the agenda, and we'll get started. But first and most important question, can you all hear me and see my presentation? If so, either just chime in vocally, or you can use the little chat feature on our GoToMeeting app. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Yes.
Anita, are you out there? All right. Well, again, my name is Daniel Brookshire. I'm the Emerging Leaders Fellow here at the Institute for Emerging Issues. And Leslie, you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. This is Leslie Stewart, the Development Director here at IEI. We're just delighted to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us on the call. I know some of you have been with us for the past, about a year along this journey around the Civic Health Index, and some of you are new to us today. We'll take just a moment to introduce our new folks, but between now and then, again, I just say welcome and thank you for joining us. Sounds like more are joining us as we speak.
Hi, everybody. This is Anita.
Hey, Anita. Daniel, Leslie here. We were just getting started.
Good.
I'll go over the agenda now. Let me take control of the presentation. All right. So we have a few items to discuss today, and I want to thank you all again for joining us. We'll do a welcome and introduction of our new members to this committee, and then explain a little bit about why civic engagement matters to us at IEI and for the state a lot, just so that we're all on the same page. We'll go over some of the goals and strategies we have for our civic engagement work over the next year. And then most importantly, we have some time reserved to hear from you all, so why we need you and your stories and strategies for success. And then Anita's going to spend a little time on our youth civic engagement work, which is a really critical focus for us here. And then Leslie will outline some of our upcoming events, and then we'll close about noon. So just to start, I want to give you a background so we're all on the same page. So we've had a business committee for civic health for about, I guess, a little over a year now, and they helped us shape the 2015 North Carolina Civic Health Index report that we released at our Emerging Issues Forum this year. And we've met about 4 times now in person and then via phone. And at our last meeting, after we released the report, the suggestion was made to expand this committee beyond just business folks. So our original committee nominated you all. We nominated you all, and your colleagues nominated you. So I think it's a testament to your good work that you are all here with us today, and we're so pleased that you can join us. I've already introduced myself, and I want to turn it to Leslie here to kind of see who else is on the line with us today.
Good morning again. Joining us today are our returning members from the original Business Committee on Civic Health, and I want to just take a moment to welcome Frank Askew with Bank of America from the call. Marty Clayton, Duke Energy, I can see you've joined us on the call. Leslie Walden from Fidelity, I'm not sure if you've joined us yet.
I'm here today. Thank you.
Wonderful, Leslie. So nice to have you. And also Melanie Chernoff from Red Hat, from our original. Nice to see you all here today. Joining us, quite a few new members are joining us this morning. I'm delighted to say Amber Smith with Activate Good is the Executive Director of Activate Good. Amber, are you with us this morning?
Hi.
Yes, good morning. Ben Hitching with the Town of Morrisville, the Planning Director with the Town of Morrisville.
I see.
Good morning.
Good morning. Laura Marks, the President and CEO of the North Carolina United Way.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Leslie Garvin, the Executive Director of North Carolina Campus Connect.
Good morning.
Rhett Boney with the North Carolina Network of Grant Makers, the Executive Director.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rhett. Tricia Lester with the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, the Senior Vice President and soon to be the Interim President. Good morning, Tricia.
Good morning.
Sarah Sandercock with the Greensboro Community Foundation, the Vice President for Community and Foundation Relations. Tara.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to join you, and representing also Walker Sanders, our president.
Thank you so much. Elizabeth Bravas from the Foundation of Western North Carolina, the president of the Foundation of Western North Carolina. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
Who else has joined us just in the last few minutes?
This is Bronwyn Lucas, Executive Director of Youth Empowered Solutions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
And Joanne Sanford.
Good morning, Joanne.
Joanne.
Good morning.
Joanne also joins us this morning as a member of our original business committee on civic health. I think that's everyone who's with us today, a big group today. We're delighted again to have you all. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Daniel.
Thank you. Just to recap, this will be a review for some of our existing members, but I'm going to give you a brief description of our work and our goals for our upcoming work and a little bit of background on our Civic Health Index report. So I've already mentioned why we expanded this committee. We gained a lot of great insight and recommendations from our original business committee, but we're to the stage where we need you all that are on the front lines of civic engagement every day. We need your expertise. We need you to be our brain trust and our reality check. So we're really pleased to have you all today. And just officially, this is your notification that we're calling this the Advisory Committee on Civic Health now. So not just the business focus here. Still very important, but we're expanding our definition here. All right. So just to get us all on the same page again, how we define civic health in our report and then with our program of work. We define it as the vitality that a community enjoys when citizens engage in public issues, involve themselves in community institutions, and interact with their neighbors. And civic health can be viewed as a measure of a community's ability to work together, to seize opportunities, and to resolve collective problems. And again, the heart of our work was producing this North Carolina Civic Health Index report, which we released at our forum. And the focus of the forum this year was on innovation reconstructed. So we really made the innovation and civic engagement connection throughout this report, and you'll see today we continue to make that connection throughout all of our work. Now when we talk about civic health, we focus on a few key indicators. So for us, those are volunteering, charitable giving, group participation and leadership, interactions with neighbors, so this means trusting your neighbors but also helping them out and getting to know them, confidence in public institutions, and this includes confidence in the media, confidence in corporations, and confidence in our local schools, and then also voting. And again, we thought of this work and incorporated it into our forum this year because of the civic health tie to innovation. So why does civic health matter to innovation? So while I'm sure most of us on this call, and myself included, think that civic engagement unto itself is a very worthy and noble cause, it's really at the heart of our democracy when you think about it. But we, through the body of literature, through our research, and then also through the process of writing this report, we found that it's not just a feel-good element of community life anymore. It's actually a key component for building social capital and the valuable skills that can facilitate upward mobility. And we're not the only ones finding this research. We we really benefited from a wealth of knowledge from our partners on the reports, the National Conference on Citizenship, and then Anita is going to speak to you all later about another report called Opportunity Nation that focuses on this key issue. Another connection to innovation is that communities where people are connected experience more collaboration and economic opportunity. And this makes intuitive sense. If you're more connected to your neighbor, or much less know their name, they're more likely to suggest, hey, I have a job opening at my office that I think you'd be interested in, than if you are not connected to your community or your neighbors at all. Connected and civically engaged communities are often more innovative. Again, this is the benefits of those connections that facilitate social capital. And then people desire to work and live in places with high levels of civic engagement. These are pleasant communities to live in and often some of the most popular. So now, one of the more surprising things we found in the report was that North Carolina is actually pretty terribly average when it comes to civic engagement. For most of those indicators I mentioned, like volunteering and charitable giving, we're right in the middle of the pack out of all the states, plus the District of Columbia. So for example, we're 29th for volunteering and giving, 27th for attending a public meeting, and 25th for participating in any type of group. And this means civic clubs, but also sports and recreation teams, and also church groups. Now, some notable exceptions. North Carolinians are a little lower in confidence in corporations and confidence in the media than the national average. So when we think about this connection between civic engagement and innovation, it's become clear to us that we have to do better than average. Average is not going to cut it in an increasingly competitive world, and we must improve our community connections in order to strengthen this capacity for innovation in the state. And one of the other disturbing findings in our report was that even though as a state we're average, some of our subgroups and other groups of North Carolinians are much less engaged than others. For example, young adults, which we're going to talk today about, defined as between 18 to 29-year-olds, are a lot less civically engaged than those that are 30 and older. And so if we want to boost the levels of civic engagement as a state, we really have to target these under-engaged groups, we're calling them. And they also include those with lower education levels, those with lower income levels, racial and ethnic minorities, and then, like I said, our young adults, and to an extent, also our rural North Carolinians. And all this, again, if you want more details, you can find all this in our Civic Health Index report. Another key thing I want to mention here is that as North Carolina continues to grow and more residents move, especially to our urban centers, like the Triangle here, in order just to maintain our average status, we have to really do a great job of integrating these new residents into the civic fabric of our communities, or else we would even slip further in the rankings. So to address these issues, IEI, we established 4 main goals for our program of work. So first and foremost, we want to increase public awareness about our current levels of civic engagement. So using our Civic Health Index, we want to give a status report of where we are and how we stack up to other states. Second, we want to ensure a greater understanding of the civic and economic connection. So again, the connection to innovation and then also to economic opportunity. Third, we want to identify promising practices for boosting civic engagement, especially in those under-engaged groups, which I mentioned. And fourth, we want to build these civic connections through our targeted programs, such as our youth programming, and Anita will speak more about that later. Now, we have 2 strategies for accomplishing our goals, and they're fairly simplistic, but we hope and think that they will work. So our first strategy is to listen. And this is taking the form of capturing the stories of success and challenges to civic engagement and innovation across North Carolina. So for example, last week, or I guess now 2 weeks ago, I went to a Salisbury Kiwanis Club and gave a similar presentation to them and asked them those questions. What are your examples of civic engagement success in Salisbury, and what are your challenges? And I'm doing this with a number of communities, and I'll just read you a few that are already on my schedule, and then hopefully we can work with you all to get more on my schedule. So in a few weeks, I'll actually be in Asheville at their Rotary Club meeting. Then I'll be in Fayetteville for their Kiwanis Club meeting, and I'll also be at a Statesville Regional Development meeting. And then in October, we're already scheduled for the North Carolina League of Municipalities Conference, and we're hoping to present also at the American Planning Association's North Carolina Conference in October. And so again, this fits into our strategy for listening and then also sharing. So then at each of these meetings, we're really encouraging and dedicating a good chunk of time to listening to our audience. So getting a sense of the state of civic engagement in communities from the western region to all the way to the coastal region. But in addition to those presentations, we're working with local media to find some of these stories. Our Emerging Issues Commons platform, which for those of you who aren't familiar, we have both an online and a physical version of this, and this allows people from across the state to submit to us ideas and stories, and for this we're specifically focusing on civic engagement, so using our Commons platform to get these civic engagement stories from others across the state. And last, and most importantly probably, are the stories of success from this very committee. So we want to hear from you especially. Continuing with our listening strategy, we here at IEI will continue to research best practices for civic engagement, specifically for our under-engaged communities. There's already a lot of literature that we can benefit from organizations across the country. And we also want to seek tangible examples of the civic engagement and economy connection in North Carolina. Now for our sharing strategy, again, this is really tied, of course, to the listening strategy as well. So this will involve a face-to-face and virtual component. So both those presentations I'll be making and across the state, but then also through our Commons platform and through our website. And then we'll be using those platforms to share stories of action and success. So from our listening tour, we'll have some best practices, hopefully some new and more localized data, because our report was just focused on statewide data. We used a census survey that couldn't go smaller than the state level. But we're hoping to become a hub for sharing this civic engagement data and connecting others that are working in this field. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too many details, but I want to pause for a second and hear back from you all. So this is really why we need you. We need your stories of success and challenges, and we need you, again, to be our brain trust and our reality check. So I just want to take a moment, and you all are not muted, so feel free to chime in vocally, or you can use the chat window if you'd like. But just let me know if you have any immediate questions or comments on what I've just presented. And then I'll ask you a few questions that you see on the PowerPoint slide in front of you. So any feedback?
This is Tricia Lester from the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. This is very helpful to get this overview. Sort of as a big question around civic engagement, how do you see nonprofit organizations playing a role in this? Because obviously they have connections to the people on the ground. But I guess as a sort of overall question, how do you see nonprofit organizations playing a role in this? And how do you see them as conduits to the people themselves?
Good question. I think overall, so with our business committee, again, we really benefited from their wealth of knowledge, but we realized that a lot of the programs, the civic programs that our corporate partners run are very focused on their employees, or you have to be, not always have to be, but primarily it seems like the employees are the ones that are participating in their civic engagement programs. So we really see our nonprofit partners as broadening the reach of our civic engagement work. So because you work with everyone in the community, that's my take. And like you said, you all are on the front lines of this every day. And for some of you, civic engagement is your sole focus. Amber, for instance, was Activate Good, so they focus on volunteering. So, we really want to benefit from not only your reach into the community, but then also your expertise.
Tricia, this is Amber, and I would echo Daniel's point of view. I think, first of all, like our businesses, nonprofits have employees, and we want to think about employee engagement in a really intentional way. He's also right that you all draw on volunteers, and so thinking about how those volunteers build civic health over time is going to be important if North Carolina is going to move the needle. And then finally, I think recognizing the beneficiaries of many of the nonprofit programs and thinking about how they themselves, as part of those programs, could engage in civic activity. I think that just sort of gives us a scale across the state that we just couldn't have without the amazing infrastructure of not-for-profit organizations.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
This is Kara. I'm with the Community Foundation in Greensboro. So while I am involved in statewide things, I day-to-day think about a local application of this, and it's great to see you all taking this on. Aspects of social capital and civic health, whatever we want to call it, has, really important to community foundations. And oftentimes I see experiences of helping folks to connect in their own backyards, that, different sectors have, objectives and have their own little universes, and oftentimes where we get, I think, breakthroughs in civic engagement is where we really help connect. I was working with a company, Lorillard, here, and helping them connect to an opportunity to do a new big involvement, a big project called Paint the Town, and now this is a few years later, they're looking at their next, what's next for this particular collaborative effort, where it's really been helpful to get them, provide this opportunity for employees to be involved in different kinds of things. So oftentimes there's this locally connecting kind of role and convening, and I could see, just you're asking for initial responses, I could see how operating even at a state level we could help to foster those kinds of connections in communities, and I think it could be done at the statewide level as well as regional or local entities.
Yeah, so I think it has to be both, and the reality is people care about the issues that are closest to them. So even though they may have statewide implications, it's just so much easier to get people to worry about what's happening in their own backyard or their own downtown or with their own young people than to ask them to look at big statewide numbers, which is exactly why we've got you all on the phone.
Hey, this is Amber Smith. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just wanted to echo that sentiment. I think local work in terms of, well, at least, with volunteerism, and of course I'm biased towards that, is important because folks don't necessarily connect to ways to volunteer with organizations across the state. It's definitely on a local level. And I shared a link to that infographic, Daniel and Anita, in the chat room. I'm not sure if folks saw it, but there's, what was represented on that big poster. But one of the things I wanted to add to the conversation about the role of nonprofits was it is our belief that we need to find ways to bolster the capacity of those nonprofits to handle greater levels of civic engagement as well. From our end, we can shout from the rooftops and try to inspire folks to volunteer all day long, but in the end, if the nonprofits can't handle all the wonderful new volunteers that we send their way, then no one has a good experience. So I think we need to think of it from both sides of the aisle.
Agreed. Thank you.
Great. So let me turn now to a few of our questions, just to keep us going here. So from what you all know of us at the Institute, what do you think that IEI can offer that's currently missing from the North Carolina civic engagement landscape? Is it what I've just described, or does anyone have something else in mind that with our ability to bring people together, that there's something else that we can do?
I mean, in many ways, Daniel's question is, how can we help you in the work that you're already doing, recognizing that, as you all have pointed out, as a statewide organization, we can't possibly be in every single community in a deep way, nor are we going to be able to build the capacity within specific organizations over the state and over time in any meaningful way. So we're here, but we would love you to help us figure out whether we're on the right track or whether there are other things that we ought to be thinking about doing that play to our strengths and support yours.
So this is Elizabeth Brady.
Anita and Daniel.
Go ahead.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Leslie Walden, and Anita and Daniel. It occurs to me that, and I haven't gone as deep into the data as probably I should, but the question that sort of comes from going through having heard the data a few times now, why? Why is North Carolina average? It was a sort of a surprising result to me that we were average in some of these categories, given the rich history we have of connection and service and faith and all kinds of attributes that I think of when I think of the state of North Carolina. And when I think of the Emerging Issues Institute, I think of great conversation starters and great conveners of people and thought and ideas. And I just wonder if there are mechanisms within IEI that might help us answer the question why.
So, Leslie, I think that's a terrific question, and we are thinking about trying to answer it in two ways. The first is Daniel is commissioning some additional research on particular under-engaged groups that will help us begin to understand at a deeper level what's going on. But I think we ought not to forget that what IEI does and believes is in the wisdom of crowds, and part of what you want to do is bring people together to help share from their own stories what's going on across the state, recognizing that the answer why might be different if you're in Asheville or in the Triangle, or I'm just picking where people on the phone happen to be from, but you get my point.
I would echo Anita and Daniel, that this is Elizabeth Brazes, that at least from where the way we do our work, civic engagement is around specific topics or populations, and and so it's sort of an integral part of grant making and following up on grant making and raising money from donors. But I would echo and we can share stories to be sure, but I think when I had a short chat with Daniel, maybe in addition to the why, and it might need to get down to some geographically specific information, would also be who and where is it going well, and are there, not to differentiate to say it's not an issue for us, but to say, you know, if it's in urban areas where other states or states are scoring really high, what are the similarities and differences between the state, and what can we learn from other places where civic engagement is very has ranked high on multiple levels above the national average. I think that's the type of data that IEI could gather, and then examples, not just the data of the where and why and how, to help maybe inform our work around the state. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So there's about 30 other states and larger cities that have written the Civic Health Index reports, and one of them is Seattle, and they're probably the top ranking city for civic engagement. So we're hoping to find in our listening tour that we're trying to find the Seattle of North Carolina, so that community that's doing this real well. And that was something that Salisbury told me the other week in my presentation. They want to know what does it look like, and you know, what's the North Carolina community that's the hot spot for civic engagement, and that's what we're trying to find.
So it sounds as though we're interested in identifying places where it works, and maybe also within that, maybe it's not the entire place, but it's an individual program or something like that that's also working. You know, this is Tara, by the way, I'm sorry. One of the things that we've just stuck our toes in here in the Guilford area is offering some relatively small grants for innovative community engagement projects. And, you know, when you put the word out that you're looking for new ideas or things that have already worked a little bit and you want to go further with it to help promote civic engagement, I mean, you know, the creativity and the innovation, going back to your first slide, just comes out of the woodwork. And you could establish guidelines. I mean, people can do amazing things with what, you know, in the business we would call micro grants. But you can't tell anybody a micro grant is a micro grant if they're going to do some amazing stuff for $1,000 or $5,000, whatever. People do great stuff. And, you know, we're just brainstorming, and I'll stop dominating now the conversation, but I could see doing an interesting sort of re-granting program where you have money available. I don't know where all this is coming from. I'm just making this up. But you might have a pool of funds that after you've identified some examples, maybe you want to promote. If we want to promote civic engagement, this might be a way to do it and see what creative ideas are out there.
This is Bronwyn from Youth Empowered Solutions, and I just pulled up the civic engagement report, and what really strikes me is just the North Carolina as a whole is average, but the disparities amongst age group, race and ethnicity, geography, and educational attainment. And I wonder if is the goal to bring North Carolina as a whole up to above average, or is the goal to close the gap and to have everyone in these subgroups be at average? And then if it's the latter, you mentioned doing these listening tours and site visits, and I'm wondering what are the places that we are looking to hear from the groups that are not performing as well, so that if we come up with a kind of a blanket strategy, it doesn't drive the disparity even greater, so that those that are already doing well continue to do well and get even above average, but the subgroups that are falling behind, there's not a strategy to kind of bring them up as well.
So the goal is to do both. As a short answer, we completely want to see the state average be better than it is. We also would be aghast if we accomplished that and created greater disparities.
This is Tricia. Lester. One of the roles that I think the Institute can play is just preaching sort of in a bullet pulpit the importance of this, and I think the link to innovation and the role that that has is probably not as well known as it should be. So I would say don't assume that people know the importance of that. So while the why and the whole issue of trying to understand and understand the sort of small, or the issues of the sort of subgroups that we've been talking about is very, very important. I really think there's some basics that a lot of people around North Carolina don't understand. So I would say let's not forget or lose sight of that as well.
Thanks.
Exactly, yeah. All right, I want to move to a similar topic here. I'm going to ask you all, in your work, we gave you some examples of how we're thinking of indicators for civic engagement, but in your work, do you distinguish between different types of civic engagement? So some of the literature, there's, sticker versus spinner forms of civic engagement, so thinking of like, one-off events like a big service day versus more sustained engagement, the ongoing connections. I'm just curious, when you all work in this space, do you make those distinctions? Are those distinctions important to you at all? Or and for us, for our sake, is it something that we should highlight in our work?
Hey, this is Amber Smith. Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Sorry, my phone's a little strange. So for us, I would say it's sort of like this ladder of engagement. Ultimately, the vision is that everyone will know how they can personally make a difference and be active in doing so. But not everyone starts at the same place to arrive there. So it's about the short term and the big days of service, and the long term and the ongoing and the skills based and everything related to volunteering and the different types of volunteering, with the ultimate goal of establishing a culture here of long-term volunteerism that's part of everyone's lifestyle. So it's all of the above with the end goal of a more engaged community overall, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes.
This is Rhett Boney with the North Carolina Network of Grantmakers, and as a statewide group that is not on the front lines, but my member foundations very much are, one of the things, I see this in a lot of different ways. To kind of build on what Amber said, there are these paths like volunteering, voting. There are different kind of formal ways to be engaged, but I think just as important are kind of the I guess systemic barriers to engagement. I think there are populations, particularly when we're looking at these these subgroups we've been mentioning, populations who feel disengaged almost completely from their communities, and it's hard to be talking about this and not be thinking about places like Baltimore and Ferguson. And I think, I don't know what Baltimore's Civic Health Index score would be, but I would think that these things are engaged, and that the more we are kind of have groups that are disengaged civically, the more we're at risk for having some real civic, I guess, unrest and disturbances. So I think there are these formal paths that are very important, but I think kind of the more organic connections to civic engagement that come from having opportunities and pathways to jobs and education. I think those are equally important. I don't know how you get at those, as I think are harder to reach, but I think they're important as well.
That's going to be a great segue into what, yeah. I was about to say, it's going to be a great segue to what Anita's about to talk about.
I'm really paid to do a better job. Remind me to give you that 50 cents the next time we're through.
So
we've talked a little bit about subgroups, and I will tell you that I was particularly alarmed by the age disparities. And, you know, initially looking at them, you think, well, maybe all young people are really busy and they don't have time to be as engaged. And then Daniel came back with the disappointing news that that has historically been the case, but not with the significant gaps that we are seeing today. As an organization that is really ultimately focused on the economic competitiveness of North Carolina, every day I get an email from a town, a county, some region of the state asking for support in thinking through really big issues like long-term unemployment, economic instability, income inequality. How do we have a prepared and diverse workforce? And so in doing some reading on young people and their engagement and what that means for the economy, I finally decided that although this is not a population that the Institute for Emerging Issues works a lot with, that if we didn't do something to try to broaden the engagement circle to include more young people, then we wouldn't be doing our jobs in terms of our mission as an organization. I asked Daniel to give you the cover shot of one really insightful report from Opportunity Nation, which is a new, very strong, bipartisan organization really focusing on disconnected youth. And you should go to their website. Lots of it is interesting, but what I found to be the most intriguing was their focus on what civic engagement meant for the future of innovation in our communities, given where these young people would be. So the two things that I thought really were worth raising up for you was first the notion that volunteering and participation in a civic or service organization in particular has such a significant predictive effect on the economic opportunity of not just the young people, but the economic opportunity of their communities. And then this notion that youth who volunteer are considerably less likely than their peers who are non-volunteers to be disconnected from work and school. And I know for many of you, you're spending time thinking about these young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who are disconnected from work and school, and thinking about all sorts of smart work-based learning, educational alternatives matters to support them. But it struck me, at least in my own work, both at IEI and my volunteer work, that I really am thinking about civic engagement for these young people, and yet it seems to be such an important matter. If you look at the slide that shows volunteerism's link to disconnection, you'll see reflected here again two things that I think are worth paying attention to. Some significant disparities between blacks and whites, and these are national numbers, so we don't have the numbers for North Carolina. But you will also see almost a 10% differential between those young people who volunteer and those young people who don't in terms of their likelihood of becoming disconnected. And I would just encourage you to look really hard at that slide and then go on to having this conversation about North Carolina's youth civic engagement. So what's different about those slides are they're looking at a younger population. The National Council on Conference on Citizenship that did our Civic Health Index defines youth as people 18 to 30. So when you look at the slide that says North Carolina's youth civic engagement, we're talking about an older population. But you can see here the differences on volunteering significant differences around participation, which of course is one of those really important ones coming up from the Opportunity Nation report. And you can sort of go across. The only place where there doesn't seem to be significant difference, and the one place where young people actually score higher than their older peers, people like me, are in terms of their confidence in corporations, which isn't one of those things that is a predictor on whether they're going to grow up to be disengaged or not. So we've been thinking about this data and scratching our heads a little bit and wringing our hands at IEI and thinking to ourselves, if this is the trajectory, if fewer and fewer young people are going to be engaged when they're 18 to 30, and we know that engagement has some effect on the economy, what do we do and when do you intervene in order to change that trajectory? And what seems to be pretty clear is that civic engagement is like developing a habit. I can't remember who spoke of the ladder of opportunity earlier. I think it was Amber. But in reality, if young adults have opportunities to do things and those are successful and they're fulfilled by it, then it creates this habit and they continue to engage at deeper and deeper and deeper levels. So as a result of that, we've put together a little program which will not change the entire world, but I think it will at least make us feel a little bit better. One of the things we're going to do this summer is we're going to engage 1,000 young people from across the state in some civic activity in our Emerging Issues Commons. A number of those young people will come in physically into the Commons, but we also have put together facilitated virtual programs so that young people who can't travel to Raleigh but are in group activities this summer, wherever they are in the state, can participate in this work. After the summer is over, we're going to try to keep these young people continually connected to IEI through a text, talk, and act event, which we will hold in the early fall. This event will require them to get together in small groups, and they will basically go through a facilitated conversation about disconnected youth and their ideas on how the state, their communities might be able to do a better job of supporting their peers. And then finally, going back to the idea of mini grants, we've decided to fold all of this into our Emerging Issues High School Prize for Innovation. And so we will offer a couple of prizes. They'll probably be about $5,000 each to groups that not only have great ideas, but themselves want to get together and try to implement that idea in their local community. As I said, it probably won't change the world, but it's at least for us a start, and I would love to get some feedback from you all who are still on the phone about how we do this well and ideas that you may have for groups of young people with whom we should engage.
Anita, it's Elizabeth. You started to touch on this, and I can't tell where you landed on it in your description of what you've done in your plans. Are we using a nationally recognized definition of civic engagement, and/or does the definition need to evolve to embrace other ways of engagement that are more important to youth that people our age may not readily tick off as engagement activities?
Right. I think it's not an either or. I think it's important for us to meet young people where they are. Right. But my sense is that if they get excited about not the means of civic engagement, but the outcomes of their civic engagement, over time they will be more likely to engage in more traditional forms.
I think that's a fair comment. I guess I just worry that some of our forms are Byzantine. And I refer
to say obsolete.
Yeah, no, I don't think so, but I think about some of the efforts that we've struggled with here in filling gaps on board service, and what is while you need boards for the fiduciary and legal oversight, and I'm using the Community Foundation model as my barometer, are the monthly or quarterly board meetings and meetings of committees, and you know, I think most of us have tried to go paperless and either have tablets or board stuff on the web. Are we still behind the times? Does civic engagement a la board service, should it look different? And would that lead to more engagement if we looked at the models that, to your point, already exist in most communities for ongoing engagement, whether it's, and another example I would use is the nonprofit volunteerism. Just like donors have changed how they want to be involved in their philanthropy, so writing a check is fine for one generation, but another generation wants to go and do a site visit and see the organization and know the people and volunteer. Yeah. You know, are we adapting the vehicles of engagement to encourage the youth? And I think of Habitat. You know, we're talking about youth being so busy. So many people will volunteer if it's a half day or a stated time on their calendar versus the, you know, monthly board meetings.
Right, right. No, I think that's absolutely right. And quite frankly, I think NCOC, the folks who do all these civic health indices, need to spend a little bit of time fighting through that issue to make sure they're actually capturing. What would be great news would be to find that there isn't nearly as big a gap based on age. It's just that measures aren't capturing. But I suspect that while the measures may be troubled, we all probably know from our own communities that there is a gap. Other thoughts, feedback on how we reach young people, when we reach them, where we reach them?
So I have, this is Leslie Garvin with North Carolina Campus Compact, and our focus is on getting college students civically engaged. But one of my, I guess, reactions is, first of all, I think this is a great beginning to convene folks who are on the ground sort of doing this work. But I guess I'm most mindful that there are existing entities that really need to be mobilized more effectively. So one of those I'm thinking of course, North Carolina does have a Commission on Volunteerism and Service. Here to date, they focus primarily on running the AmeriCorps and VISTA programs that they have been charged with federally. But I'm cognizant that in many other states, they take a lead role. In fact, I believe it's California and some other states who have actually created a cabinet-level position for Secretary of Volunteerism. So I want to just point out that there are sort of existing entities that if we were to maybe hold them more accountable or maybe provide them supports that they need, they could be mobilized to do some of this work. And that they're out of the governor's office. Also, I know that the DPI, of course, K through 12, I'm actually on the North Carolina Service Learning Coalition, which when Learn and Serve went away, which is the federal funding that gave school districts funding for service learning, we've been trying to figure out how do we fill in that gap? How do we continue to get K through 12 schools to do service learning or include it in their curriculum? And this is a very new coalition. It's a couple of years old, so there's a lot more work that could be done there. We've just launched regional councils. The first one is going to be in the Piedmont, where we're trying to bring together K-12 educators with higher education educators to improve service learning. So I would just say that while we certainly can create some new models and programs, I want to be sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that there are mechanisms in place that if they were strengthened and supported, that could probably have a really widespread impact.
Absolutely.
This is Amber Smith again. To add to that, we have a semester-long curriculum designed for high schools that teaches students all about volunteerism and leadership and community issues, et cetera. And you know, we love to work with anyone interested on cultivating relationships with more high schools who might be interested in building on that service learning too. And I believe we're part of that service learning coalition as well. So I think if we can make one another aware of what we're all doing and the resources available, that will certainly help this conversation progress.
Yeah, so this is Tara. I agree with that. And we're part of a statewide network of youth philanthropy programs. So a lot of community foundations and some other philanthropy organizations have youth grant-making programs where the kids give grants, you know, 2 kids, 4 kids, 5 kids kind of a thing. And it's a wonderful network that the organization Leading to Change coordinates, and we can certainly connect there as well. It's, you know, it's a very diverse kind of slice. It's not only the student council leaders that are involved in that.
Well, good, because clearly as we look at these numbers, we've got to get all of our kids involved. So this last set of points about other organizations in place, I think, is perfect for Daniel moving to the sort of call to action, because just to be clear to everybody on the phone, it is not the ambition of the Institute for Emerging Issues to take over this space. We're excited to have published the report, as Tricia Lester said. It was really interesting to deliver that as part of an Emerging Issues Forum on Innovation, and it's clear to us that it caused some people to pay attention in ways that they otherwise may not have. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is add value, not duplicate anybody's effort, and recognize that we have very limited capacity. You heard Daniel talking about all the places he's going. It's his shoe leather that's getting worn out as he slept all over the day talking about this report. What we're trying to do is to have lots of partners and friends and really support the work that you and others are already doing and already doing very well. So Daniel, are you going to take us through the call to action, or Leslie? I'm mindful of time here.
Yes, I'll do it quickly, but I think it's just a testament, just the conversation we just had, that I think we have the exactly right people on this call. So I'm very happy to hear of all the things going on, and that's exactly what we needed. And so this call to action section, in the interest of time, you can all just email me your responses to these. But what more must we do in this space? What again, knowing what you do about IEI, or if you need to know more about IEI, where do you see our role playing in this? Like Anita just said, we don't want to, you know, we're not taking over anything. We see our role as a collaborator in the state, and I think this is a testament to what our conversation was today, that there's a need for this, because there's so much going on that it's kind of hard to all stay on top of, and then anyway. So what more must we do as an institute, but then also statewide? And then I have a list of suggested ways that you can help act on civic engagement with us. So we'd love for you to host us with one of these presentations, or come join us at a presentation, and I'll hopefully in the coming weeks we'll have a calendar of events that you can see where I'm going, when, and where. We'd love for you to help write an op-ed about the importance of civic engagement. And like we mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't know that connection between civic engagement and the economy and innovation. So if we can get that into the public sphere, that and to make it more well-known, these connections. We'd love for you to help us with that. And then lastly, any support you can give us for travel, for materials, for videotaping, for capturing these stories would also be much appreciated. And I'll keep this short as well, but just for our upcoming events and next steps as a committee, we would love for, over the course of the next, until our next forum, which is in February, if we could come interview each of you, or as you pass through Raleigh, if we could just grab a moment of your time to pick your brain about these issues we discussed today, and then and perhaps we at our Commons website you'll see we have a whole cache of stories on YouTube of different issues throughout the state. But if we could create a series on civic engagement, interviewing you leaders in civic engagement in the state, that's something we'd love to get with you all as members of this committee. This next bullet point is just very beginning discussion. Amber and I had just been emailing about it, but a potential on September 11th, a day of service, maybe here at the Institute or at NC State. And then I'll turn it to Leslie here in just a second for that fall event. But there's only going to be that fall event that we would like you to commit to, and then also a meeting in January before we go back into our new Emerging Issues Forum, and to celebrate a year of having released this report and this work. And we've tentatively scheduled that for Thursday, January 21st at 10:30. So with that said, I want to turn it over to Leslie here at the end and let her talk about our potential fall event.
It's been so exciting to listen to all of your great ideas, listen to your feedback, hear your examples of work you're doing in your communities. It certainly enlivens our work and lifts our spirit to know what's going on across the state, whether it's in Asheville or Greensboro or right here in our own backyard. But we thank you so much for your grand ideas and your willingness to share. Many of you know I come out of a community foundation background, and it's delightful to reconnect with you and realize the great work you're doing across the state of North Carolina. There are many opportunities, we think, for us to partner and work together in this civic engagement work across the state. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to visit us here in Raleigh at the beautiful Hunt Library and to firsthand see how the Commons work, over the course of the last hour, we've talked a lot about what we're doing in the Commons and how we're sharing information and opportunity through the Commons, our Summer in the Commons program. I would like to personally invite you to come visit with us, see how these programs work, become engaged in the Commons, and if you'd like to reach out to me personally, I'd be delighted to work with you either in person here or through the electronic connection through the web. So however we might connect, that would be delightful. We will be offering a fall opportunity to come together around our speaker series here at IEI. We are looking to invite a guest speaker to engage in a conversation with us on civic engagement this fall. We have extended an invitation to a nationally recognized speaker, and we hope to be able to be back in touch with you very soon in the next few weeks, certainly by the middle of June, around an early fall date for this speaker to come and talk to us about her experiences in civic engagement across the nation, and to offer us some strategies that she's learned from her experience. We're very excited to be back in touch with you with that information. Daniel, I'll ask you to close us out today.
Sure. Well, again, I just want to thank you all for joining us in this new venture as we expand the existing business committee into this now newly named advisory committee, and look forward to hearing from us on our fall event, and then also picking your brain in the coming weeks. But again, it means a lot to us here that you were all on the call. And Anita, do you have any closing remarks?
I don't. I want to say thank you to all of you, obviously, for being with us, but nothing else substantively. I've been jotting down notes, and Danielle, we've got more work to do.
We do. Well, thank you again, and with that, I'll close us out. And this last slide has all our emails on it, and obviously we've contacted you before, so you know how to get a hold of us. So